space left. So, like I do with all my classes, I try to record them. I say this at every semester, that sometimes the recording mechanism doesn't work. Oh, that was Canvas. Open up a new one. So I can't guarantee that they'll be there. So this is going to be, I think, an exciting class. It will be a little bit different, let's say, than a normal class. We're holding this at the middle of the day so that hopefully we can go out and do field work sometimes. My advisor, that was a long time ago when I was a graduate student. But when I was a graduate student, I guess I started over 20 years ago as a graduate student. But my advisor, when I was a graduate student, he's now retired. But he likes to refer to the use of unmanned aerial vehicles in mapping and remote sensing as personal remote sensing. That is one of the things that's exciting about it, is that you can collect your own remote sensing data whenever you want, and for the areas that you want. And so that's what we're going to learn about this semester. Personal remote sensing, according to Dr. Jensen. All right. So here's the syllabus, and I'm going to go over what's going to happen here. Let's see. I guess we'll start off here. What's going to happen in this class? Well, there are a few different purposes. One, I kind of taught this informally to like a few, not really, I didn't teach it, but I had an informal class, and people were like, sometimes a few people were like, actually I've done that a couple times, but usually just 2 or 3 students each time. Some people ask, hey, are we going to learn how to be a drone pilot? Does anybody know what that means? A UAS, Part 107 pilot. Okay. So basically, in order to actually fly a drone and do it for any commercial, educational, anything but for fun, you actually have to have a license from the FAA to do that. You could be flying the exact same drone. If you're doing it for fun, it doesn't require a license. If you're doing it for any educational benefit or any research endeavor, any commercial endeavor where you're making money, that requires that you have a license from the FAA. So you need to learn a little bit about airspace and regulations, and you also need to learn a little bit about how things fly, maybe what it would look like if it wasn't flying right, what kind of state of mind you should be in when you fly. So we are going to include that in this course. People have asked about that, and that's one thing that we're going to include. So I have that listed there. Should probably stay close to this so that you hear me on video, but that's really going to be a more minor part of the course, but it will take 2 class meeting times. So we're gonna talk about that, what it takes to become a remote pilot, what do you have to do, but we're going to go much beyond that. Okay? We're going to learn about unmanned aerial systems, which is what the federal government calls them. And sometimes you'll hear unmanned aerial vehicles, and I almost use those interchangeably here. But kind of like the word geographic information system, it can mean all the hardware, the software, the people that are using it. Same thing with an unmanned aerial system. It could mean all of that together. So we're going to learn how to plan and execute mapping missions, then process all the data you get. You're going to collect a lot of data doing this. So we can read through most of that. But we are going to do a few assignments, and we're going to have 5 field days. This is a once-a-week class. It only meets 14 times. So that's a good chunk of our times together. Okay, those 5 days. One of them will be optional. We're going to go all the way up to Hazelhurst, Mississippi. It's a research site that we've done. We've flown the drone before. We've created a 3D model of a riverine channel. So we're going to fly it again and compare and see how that's changed. So that'll be part of the class. So regardless of whether you go or not, you'll still be part of processing the data. You'll still see that process. But I would like you to let me know if you want to go, because right now I've reserved the 15-passenger van for that trip. And since it's optional, if there's a number of people that don't want to go, then I can bump down to the 8-passenger van. So let me know if you want to go. We've got enough room for everybody. But that is optional, and we'd be gone the whole day that day. Let me look on the calendar when that is. So that's April 3rd. That's the optional field day. So we're going to go up there. We're going to drive up. It'll be hopefully a little bit warmer, and we're going to collect drone data that day. Because we're trying to get a 3D model, atmospheric conditions don't matter as much. We're not really concerned about the vegetation, how that's changed. So we'll probably go that day. We'll definitely go that day unless it's rain. So unless it's rain, we'll head up there on that day. So it's this place called Bayou Pierre. I said that we're going to leave at 7. I'm doing this in conjunction with anybody know Frank Heidenor downstairs, Dr. Heidenor? Doing this in conjunction with him. So it's like his research study area. We worked on this project before. So he wants to leave a little bit later. So maybe I should change that. But we're still going to leave earlier than class would normally start. That's one reason why I make it an optional, because I know, we have 12 students. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Now we have 11 students, and although we have room for everybody, with 11 students, there's going to be some people that have a class, either before or after, and they don't want to miss it, or they can't miss it. So that's okay. But come if you can to that one. All right? The other 5 field days are a little bit weighted toward the end, but the next one, so next week we're going to learn about the FAA test and talk about what the content of that is. And then the week after that is the first day that we'll actually fly a drone. Okay? So we'll probably do that at the old Grand Hook golf course. So this day we're just going to practice flying them around. All right? We're not going to plan a mapping mission. I'll maybe talk about that a little bit if we were. We can practice flying them around and taking pictures and whatnot. Just getting familiar with the drones if you haven't flown before. I guess if you have flown before, you can help other people out. But so that's the first day, and I'll explain a little bit more about where this is. But it's only like 3 or 4 miles away. The university owns this thing. It's easy to get to. It used to be a golf course, but they shut the golf course down. They built this thing called the Polymer Institute, but it only takes up like this little corner of the land. The rest of it's just kind of growing up with grass about that tall. All right, so that's what we're going to do then, and then we're going to do several more. Let's see, 1, 2, 3 others besides the one I already talked about. So on March 6th, we're going to do our first mapping mission, probably in the same area. And then later, we're going to do 2 other mapping missions. One is we're going to do specifically for vegetation analysis. And so I may end up moving this around a little bit, because we want specific atmospheric conditions for this type of data. So we might flip-flop these, or this might get moved up, flip-flop with that if that's a great day. But I'll let you know beforehand. So And we'll talk about that before we get there. We'll talk about what makes a great weather day, specifically for this type of analysis, before we get to that day. All right? And then those will both be out at Lake Thoreau, which is another university-owned property that's just a little bit further out than the Dana Golf Course, but it's actually on West 4th Street. Some of you may already know where those are. All right, so peppered in between there, we'll be processing the data and talking about how to process it for various applications. So we're going to talk about, I already mentioned, we're going to talk about like if we're trying to measure something like geomorphological change, then there are different considerations, and there's different types of sensors that we would use for that. If we're trying to measure, and there's also different ground data that we need. If we're trying to measure a vegetation, then we need a different type of ground data, obviously, and we need different weather conditions, and then we actually process the data a little bit differently. So we'll talk about data processing in between these. As we collect the data, we'll have data to process and do that. Okay. So I mentioned here that in this course we'll be using mostly relatively inexpensive quadcopters. I don't mean like hobbyists. These are like prosumer is kind of what they call it, like right on the edge between professional and consumer things that usually cost between $1,000 and $5,000 to acquire. So we'll be using these GHY Phantom 4 drones that I have. I have 3 of those that I bought on various research projects. We have a smaller DJI Mavic drone that we'll be using. And then I have some older drones that we used that were called 3DR Solo drones. And I'm going to crack them out and see if they still work. We'll fly those around for fun, for comparison. If there's anybody here that has their own drone, you're welcome to use it. I have a few recommendations, like for this course, if you wanted, you do not need a drone, but here's DJI. So I'm talking about Phantom series, Mavic series. These are both like a new Mavic right now costs $1,500. A new Mavic is a new Phantom is about the same. Parrot is a French company that is it's actually kind of having financial troubles. It seems like a lot of these companies that try to come into this market space do have financial trouble competing with drones made in China, basically, like DJI. This is a French company. This drone won't carry anything besides the camera that's already on it, but it is a little bit cheaper option, and it has the ability, later we'll talk about this in a second, but it has the ability to basically be programmed. That's one of the things that you need. You need to be able to tell the drone, fly on this flight path. Because although you could acquire data for mapping just flying around taking pictures, it is more of a pain to do it. So this one does have that ability. It's kind of in their own closed ecosystem, but it does have that ability to do that. All right. So we're going to be using some software. Besides the drones, we'll be using some software. I do have an assignment. One of your assignments will be to acquire your own data. And so you're going to check out a drone, and you do not have to get licensed from the FAA for this course. You don't have to. It's not a requirement. So if you're not licensed, then then you have to check it out, and you have to like schedule a time that I can be there. But technically, since it's an educational purpose, you can't just be flying around for fun. But if you are licensed, then you can take the drone yourself and collect the data, or if there's somebody that's licensed in the class, you can do it together. All right. So the post-processing software that we're going to use is we're going to learn how to process some of this drone data in a few different pieces of software. ArcGIS Pro has recently included the ability to do some of this processing right inside of the software that's there. I've only actually tried to run through it once in ArcGIS Pro. It's a new thing that they created about 3 or 4 months ago, and it didn't seem to work great. Maybe there are some specific applications, and it'll probably get better through time. So it's a good thing to learn. All right. There's some software that's been around for 3 or 4 years now, both Pix4D and Drone Deploy, that we'll use, and it's professional software that's meant for this. Pix4D actually stands for Pictures for Drones. Drone Deploy, obviously, stands for something with drones. So this is photogrammetry software. So we're going to talk a little bit about photogrammetry principles. Because as you can imagine, a drone that's going through the air taking pictures, even if it has stability associated with it, and it's pointing straight down, it's not always going to be pointed exactly straight down. How many people have taken a remote sensing course here, by the way? Okay, it's about half of you. That's fine. You don't need a remote sensing course when I talk about some of the principles here. But for those of you who have taken a remote sensing course, what kind of distortion exists, or maybe just think about it, even if you haven't, what kind of distortion exists when you take a picture? Why isn't a picture just a map? Like if I go up and fly up in the air and point straight down and take a picture, how is scale causing that? What is scale, first of all? What's the term scale mean? Right? Yeah, the relative reference size. So like 1 inch on a map means some distance in the real world. Or sometimes we just generalize it. 1/10 of a foot is a whole foot. So it's a 1 to 10 ratio on a map. Keep using the US. So 1 centimeter would be 1/100th of a meter represents a meter on the ground. Something like that. So it's a 1 to 100 scale. Right? So that's scale. Now, if I take a picture, if I fly up above, or even if I was in an airplane or satellite, just a raw picture of the ground pointed straight down. It'd be better if I was in a satellite, but if I'm in a drone or an airplane that's lower to the earth, how is scale affecting that picture I take? Or maybe I'm not asking that right, but is the scale uniform throughout that entire picture? No. It's because as they go this way, as they go out from the center of the picture, from the principal point, or the place where it's directly nadir from the camera, pointing straight down. Nadir is the opposite of zenith. Okay? As they go straight down, those areas, as they travel out from that center point, are not the same scale. They change scale as they go out because of the way the camera is set up. And I also see more of the size of objects as I go out. All right, so we'll talk about that. But that's why you need the software, because the software corrects that and changes the scale everywhere because we have overlapping pictures. Okay, so the latter two allow you to create. So with both Pix4D and Drone Deploy, you can get a time-limited free account. So if you want to do this on your own computer at home, then you can do that. Just to make sure. I forgot what the time-limited thing is, how long it is. Also, there's I have a Pix4D account, and there's a cloud processing feature. It's a little bit limited. You can't do everything you can do on the desktop version, but you can do almost everything you can do on the desktop version. One of the things you can't do is ground control points. So you can't tie it tight to the earth. So that's a pretty big limitation. You can do it on desktop, but not on the cloud. All right, but we'll have that there. So there aren't any formal requirements for the course. However, I think the remote sensing course would be a good buddy course to this. So if you haven't taken a remote sensing course, you don't have to have one to be in this course, but I think that would help fill out your skills as a collector of this type of data to take that type of course. So you might take that after this course, and while you're taking that course, you might think, oh yeah, that really applies to what I learned about in the UAV course. So that's what I mean there. Okay, there's no formal text for this class. I have a number of readings that are up there on Canvas. I do have a recommended. The reason why I recommended this particular book is it's only like, I think it was only like $12 or something, $14. So if you did want to study for the remote pilot small unmanned aircraft systems test, it is available. You can download this. But we're going to be talking about a lot of these principles, and we're going to cover pretty much everything you need to know in class. So this would be a supplement. It's not required. They do have a small cost associated with them. These two actually come together as a single package. There are a few apps. This one right here, I don't know much about this one. Another one of my colleagues recommended this one. The second one I actually purchased when I was studying for the test. It was like $50. Ran on Windows. So those are the two things. Now again, you don't actually have to pass the test to pass the class or anything. It does cost $150. You have to pay to the government, but you actually pay it to a contracting organization called CATS. Talk about more of that next week. But that is basically the first exam in this class will be a Part 107 practice exam. So you get an idea about how well you would do if you took the real test. Now, I will say, I didn't know, I should have asked, but if anybody's already taken the exam, or if you take the exam before March 20th, then you don't have to take this first exam. All you have to do is show me the results of the test or your actual license, and you'll be passed with an A grade. If you pass this exam, you'll be graded on the following scale. I made this easy, right? It's not like you have to get an A to get an A. You don't have to get 90% or higher. You get 80% or higher, you get an A. So this isn't like a hardcore exam. You can't fail it as long as you take it. You'll get at least a D. So when I took it, I got an 85 on the test. I still passed. You only need a 70 actually to pass in real life. So I would get an A in this class. So yeah, that's one of the grades in this class is a practice exam. But you can be exempt from that if you want to. The second one we'll have some ratings and some class participation. That's a smaller portion of your grade. And then basically, if you come to all the fly days and say something in the 4 weeks of class, you'll get all the points there. All right. So you do have to write a paper on a UAV drone application. This is due April 5th. It's not a very long paper. It's about 5 pages, double-spaced, based on the following. So I'll let you all read through that, but it can be any application that you choose. And it doesn't even necessarily have to be a mapping application. Okay? It could be a different application where you're using more video. We'll talk about that a little bit in today's lecture, but emergency response or something like that. Being a geography class, it should at least include something. There should at least be a need for a spatial requirement. Which emergency response would be? Like, where are the people being affected by this particular? So yeah, there just has to be a spatial component. And then I gave you some ideas. We can talk about this a little bit more as we go through. But this is basically like you researching how UAVs are used in a particular field of interest that you might be interested in. Second one, the next assignment is that you actually have to process some drone data and create a map. You can create a map or you can create a model. You have to come up with some area measurements or some volume measurements, count something like that, and report on your findings. This one is really, the description of your findings should be about a page. This is like basically doing a lab. You're doing one on your own. We're going to do a bunch together. That's what you're going to do on your own, and just report what you did. Basically, you're just demonstrating that you can go through the entire workflow on your own that we talk about in class. That one's actually due after the final exam, right before school ends, in case you want to procrastinate. No, just kidding. The reason I did that is so that we've already done as much in class before and kind of get an idea for it. You can start collecting the data, as soon as you want to, really. But you may refine your processing of the data until later in the course. All right, and then finally the final exam. The final exam is going to cover the other material that doesn't have anything to do with licensing, more having to do with the photogrammetric principles that we talk about in the course, processing principles. We're going to talk about what kind of weather concerns you have when you go out and fly the drone and when you're doing mapping, that sort of thing. So we'll have a review session though to cover what will be on the final, on the last day of regular class. So all those numbers, they only add up to 90. So basically what I'll do is that any of these last three assignments here, in other words, not the FAA test or the class participation, whatever you get the highest on these, get an extra 10%. So this should be one of those classes where, if you show up and you learn, that you'll get a good grade in. I try to structure it that way. It's not an extremely intense class, but it'll be fun, and we'll learn a lot. We'll get a lot done. We'll do a lot of it together. All right. Okay, we already went through the course schedule. Does anybody have any questions about that? There are a few more people. Oh, yes. Right. Yeah, leaving here 11:30 is probably fine. Yeah. So we'll just say, hey, we'll all meet over there at, I guess 11. What do you think? How long do you think you could? Yeah. Right. So, and also I've got the van, but I only got the small van for those closed field days. So we won't all fit. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And so, if any of you is this is this anybody's only class today? So you guys could probably just meet us there, rather than load in the van. Right, you don't have to even come to campus. So even if it was just you three, the rest of us could all fit in the van. So, and the van seats, what is it, 7? Anybody been in those vans? 7, I think it's 7. Yeah, it would fit. 3 of you met us there, then the other 6 could be there. Because I'd have to do stuff. All right. There's a few of those days where the bigger van is available, so I might try to swap it out if I can. Since the class got a little bit larger, I forgot. I knew you were in the class, Tyler, but you don't show up on the list. Okay. So, yeah, I may have to swap up for the bigger van if it's available. It wasn't available for every single one of the days that I had it. But it is pretty close. I guess if worse comes to worse, I could even make two trips. Okay. So on the field days, we'll cover this later, but on the field days, we'll just meet in the gravel parking lot, which is behind the math zone. That's where the van is. We'll meet there at 11:30. Does that sound good? And then, which is when the class usually starts. And then we'll drive over there, and we'll probably get there at 11:45. Maybe. And then that'll just be included. So those would be about 2 hours of activity, and then we'll come back and we'll be here. So you'll get back on those days before. What time is your class? Oh yeah, you'll get back. So normally this class will get out about 2:30, 2:45. 2:45 is what it says in the block. I think we only need to meet till 2:30 to fill the IHL requirement, but I might go till 2:45 a few times. All right. Yep. All right. So the last page is the disability statement and academic integrity. Any other questions? Those are some good questions. All right. So. If you do have access, which I think everybody here should have access, then you'll see this. So I've got the first 2 weeks. I don't have the lecture up for next week, but I'll get that up quick. I was planning to do that this morning. Almost went to other things. Okay, so I have the lecture for today, and then I have some readings. So there's an open source book that's actually just called I forget the title, but it's in there. So this drones book, I've downloaded some things. I'm saying it's open source because it is. It's on the internet, and I'm not disobeying any copyright laws by providing you this information. Is what I'm trying to get at. So. So it's not the newest book in the world, but almost everything that Stell talks about still applies. So I've got that as a reading for today. I've got this article that was published in the journal GIS and Remote Sensing. It's a great survey article talking about the different kinds of drones that are available and what they're good for. And it was actually written by the first author, somebody that I know the first author a bit, but the third author is the third and fourth author are my advisor and his kid. So, who's also his son is, I say kid, he's older than me, and he's awesome. But anyway, that's that survey article. And these are some videos. We'll actually talk about them today. These were originally included in the video, in the lecture, but they were too big. All right. And then I have a couple other readings for you to do. This This one right here, this FAA Part 107, is more for you to just poke around the website, not necessarily read everything that's there. But then there are a couple other articles that really only tangentially have to do with the FAA, but they do have a lot to do with the topic of the course. So those are readings for next week. I'll be providing additional readings each week, some of which I've already uploaded if you get curious. If you go up into files here. All right. So today, talk about a little bit more about drones and what they can do. A lot of people don't like, a lot of people that do this for research activities don't like it. Never say the word drone, so I'm not like that. I'll say drones all the time. Technically, unmanned aerial systems for remote sensing. I got a drink. Okay. So the reason that I like to show this picture first is that this was really the first foray I had into using drones. So this was about 5 years ago, before commercial drones really came into being or were really popular. And but they did exist. Commercial drones existed, but just like today, they're not waterproof or anything. So I taught remote sensing courses, and other people taught remote sensing courses. Well, anyway, in one of my colleagues' classes, this guy I collaborate with on a lot, and he does teach classes, but he does his full-time job is that he works for this organization called the Nature Conservancy. And he was talking about remote sensing, and he mentioned drones. And he had a student that raised his hand and said, "That's not really how it is. You know, this is how drones work." And he kept saying things like that in class because my colleague and I had never really used drones. But this student, this undergraduate student, had broken his leg and spent 6 months laid up. And he spent that time tinkering and building his own unmanned aerial vehicle. And so my colleague said, "Hey, could you build one for some research that my colleague, who's talking about me, and I are doing?" So we were doing some research looking at trying to map these coastal areas in Haiti. And one of the things that we like to do when we're mapping these areas is to find out what it looks like. Okay? So oftentimes when you create a map, it comes from imagery initially. You get imagery, you take that imagery, and you decide, okay, well, these areas are mangrove, and these areas are, well, there can be different types. Well, there are different types of mangroves. There's red mangrove, black mangrove, there's buttonwood mangroves, different types of mangroves. There's also mangroves that look kind of like they're almost dead, and mangroves that are vibrant, and tall mangroves, short mangroves. There's also other type of coastal vegetation that looks green, but it's not mangrove. And then we're also trying to map the nearshore area, so we needed to know what was in the water. And one of the secrets is that even when you're looking, not one of the secrets, one of the strategies, even when you're looking at the imagery, it's hard to tell what's what. But for those of you taking a remote sensing course, you can point out those areas and process the data using image processing techniques, and it can help identify other areas. Like you can say, okay, this is healthy mangrove, and it identifies all the healthy mangroves. This is soft bottom area, like sandy bottom area. Identify all the sandy bottom. This is a coral reef. Identify all the coral reefs. But the secret is getting to all those places, or one of the secrets. So this drone was originally created not to do mapping per se, but to be a tool in mapping. So because we couldn't get everywhere, we had the student build this drone. We could fly out over the mangroves and look at different types of mangroves. And this one was even waterproof. It would land on the water and take a picture of what was underneath the ground right there. So you get some of the other applications for drones by considering this. And yes, that is just a piece of Tupperware because it wouldn't all fit inside. So these are some pictures. This is a picture of a coral head. We affectionately refer to it as Henri, which is, I guess, French for Henry. We were in Haiti at the time. So that's what we named it. Here's my colleague Steve. Swimming around. That's taken from this drone. You can see, we can see the different vegetated areas without having to go everywhere. It's hard to get in to these areas. There's another picture of some other coral reefs. They have very pretty coral reefs. Not a lot of fish, but very pretty coral reefs in these areas. All right, so what is an unmanned aerial vehicle or an unmanned aerial system? Because you've heard the term model aircraft before, right? Everybody heard the term model aircraft? Are model aircraft new? Like if I said, hey, model airplane. How long have people been flying model airplanes for? I don't know, but it's like 50, 60, 70 years. Probably there was somebody that made some model aircraft not long after actual flight occurred, right? But even if we put that aside, people have been flying like gas-powered airplanes for a long time. So what's so special about these unmanned aerial systems or unmanned aerial vehicles that's different? And some people might say, well, they look different. They got these like helicopter blades. But actually, we can make unmanned aerial systems that look a lot like airplanes. Right? So what makes them different? Well, there are a few things that happened in the last 10 years, advances in a few things that allowed unmanned aerial systems to take off, to be able to be utilized on a wide scale to collect geographic data. Okay? One is that sensors started becoming lighter and lighter, because that is a cost associated with these things, taking these things off the ground. Okay? You know, we have to be able to have light enough sensors. This is a camera that's as good a camera as you'd find in a digital single lens refraction system, digital SLR system. But it's only got the sensor and a little computer component that triggers it. So it's still like heavier than some of these others, but it's a very high quality camera, and it can be mounted on a drone. Obviously, these action cameras got really small. Everybody knows what a GoPro is. But there are other sensors. This sensor here is a multispectral sensor that can sense out beyond visible light. And we'll talk about why that's important here in just a few more slides. But that's important for vegetation. And so we've got these sensors. And another thing is that computers got small enough. We've had computers for a long time, right? But even, when did the iPhone first come out? I can't remember off the top of my head. What's that? 08. So if it was 08, that's just 10 years ago, right? So computers got smaller, and the devices that are in your smartphone are actually very similar to the devices that are in these things called autopilots. An autopilot is a computer. The computer usually running Linux, but it has the ability, it has some internal sensors in it, and has the ability to have other sensors connected to it, such as, like in your smartphone, there's a sensor that tells which way it's oriented, right? Okay. Well, in an autopilot, there's a sensor that tells which way it's oriented. In an autopilot, there's a sensor that tells which way is north, just like in your smartphone. Okay, I should have brought this. I actually have this picture of the one that I have. this particular sensor. And this is actually this was the first drone that we made here, in our lab. We didn't make one like the one in the last slide, but we put this together, and it had this pitch hawk in it, and it has a compass that tells which way is north, and it has the ability to have a GPS that tells what does the GPS tell? Position, right? It actually can do Z elevation, but it's worse than the XY position. So it also, lots of these devices also have a barometer that is surprisingly more accurate, especially when it's coupled with the GPS position to get altitude. So sometimes people refer to that system that tells you what the orientation is as an inertial navigation system. So it's inertial. It can tell, first of all, the degree to which it's tipping and how fast it's tipping. All right, so that technology allowed a model aircraft like this to even develop. So the way that, how does a helicopter work? It's a little different than one of these guys. So a helicopter actually works, it has one blade swinging this way, has another blade on the back, and this blade is controlling a lot of things. It controls, going up. It also can change the pitch, so it can change how much lift there is on a certain side. The blades themselves turn. You change the pitch on a certain side so that it can tip right and left and down and up. But this blade actually counteracts the force of this blade turning. I don't know if I'm going the right way or not. But it counteracts the effect of that and can change the yaw of the aircraft. Well, with a quadcopter, it's different. The blades are all fixed. And every other blade is spinning in the opposite direction. Every other blade is spinning in the opposite direction. And the way that it turns is that the way that it moves around in the air is that the electric motors that are turning will change their speed. So if these two on this side decrease and these increase, it'll tip. And when it tips, it'll move in this direction. Let me change it. It'll fly steady. If you do this, it'll do that way. And same. So it can go on any axis. The roll, the pitch, the yaw. The yaw is the axis where it's which direction it's facing. The roll is side to side and will cause it to travel in a certain direction, side to side, and the pitch is front to back, and when it pitches front to back, it'll cause it to go forward or backward. So, if we have a computer on board that is constantly able to monitor all of these positions and provide feedback, it can do things like hold its position really well, or it can be told, go to a specific position, because there's feedback between the GPS and the computer. Go to a specific, it's over there, so I need to go over there. So the ability to have an autopilot that was small enough and that consumed as little electricity as possible, along with the sensors, allowed us to be able to fly these small things around the air and collect data that basically rivaled things that you can collect on an aircraft. On an aircraft, you're just mounting up a high-quality digital camera. All right. Now, part of the UAS system is the software that goes along with it. So these software tools probably could have come around before, but they came about as a result of now having this data. So the ability to program the autopilot to tell it to go to certain locations exists in lots of software packages, and we'll talk about that. Basically, you can plan a flight, a mission, and it'll fly along this path, and then collect imagery that you can process and do a few different can do a few different products that are very, very useful for various applications. We'll talk about those. So we refer to that whole thing as an unmanned aerial system or a drone. All right. So, as I said, you're not required to take a remote sensing course, but we are going to talk on a few slides here about the principles of remote sensing. Basically, we all know we've got the sun. The sun emits energy. And we see some of that energy as light, but there's more energy than is emitted besides the light. Travels through the vacuum of space and encounters the atmosphere. Some of it's scattered by the atmosphere, and it's reflected off of objects on the surface of the Earth. And those objects, it reflects back toward the atmosphere. That's why we're actually remote sensors. Our eyes are remotely sensing things in the same way, or very, very similar way, to the way a camera on a satellite or a camera on a drone is sensing. It's reflected light from the surface. Occasionally, we get sensors that are capable of seeing the energy that the Earth emits. You know the Earth emits energy? I mean, everybody probably knows that. Not like in a conspiracy theory way or anything, but the Earth, since it's absorbing so much of that energy from the sun, does emit some lower frequency energy. And most of the stuff that's useful for us is actually in the thermal range. So when you're talking about the thermal range, you're talking about the object itself emitting that. Its temperature. What's its temperature? What's the temperature of the Earth? That's emitted energy. It's not reflected. Okay? I mean, it came from energy that was absorbed, and then it caused the thing to heat up, so now it's emitting its own energy. I'm emitting some thermal energy right now. Okay? I feel like I'm maybe a little bit warmer than 98.6 because it's hot in here, but I'm probably about that. Okay? All right. So energy that's incident is either absorbed, transmitted, or reflected back to a sensor. The sensor records that energy, and we can use what's recorded by a particular sensor to find out what something is. Because everything, I shouldn't say everything has a different spectral response, but lots of things have a different spectral response. So this is the fundamental thing that makes remote sensing work. Okay? And I said we're remote sensors, right? So, I can tell your jacket's green, and your jacket is, both of your jackets are gray. You don't have a jacket, your shirt's gray. Because of this. The grass is green, and it has this little peak in the green light. And different sensors are capable of seeing different portions of this, what we call spectral signature. A digital camera only sees, typical digital camera, like the one on my phone, only sees red, green, and blue. That's all it sees. Just sees a chunk here, chunk here, chunk here. So you're not going to be able to distinguish different things unless they're totally different colors. But there are some sensors out there that see into the near-infrared, and look, there's a lot more differences between things in the near-infrared. So we'll deal with some near-infrared sensors that will map to drones this semester because they're good for looking at the difference between different types of vegetation. So you can see some different types of vegetation here. Maybe I should, turn off the light, I'm not sure, but so here's the spectral signature of these different leaves. If you've taken a remote sensing course, this will be a review, but if you haven't, you can see the differences in these different leaves. You could use those differences if we were able to collect that data through a drone to study and to see different types of vegetation. And for example, if we wanted to see if they're senescing at different times, we could do that, or we're just interested in the differences between different crop types, or deciduous and conifer trees, things like that. All right. So what type of data do unmanned aerial systems allow us to acquire? I mean, one's pretty obvious. We can acquire imagery, right? What kind of imagery? So I've kind of categorized it in a little bit. One is that unmanned aerial systems can collect video, and particularly georeferenced video. In other words, they can fly over a certain area, and based on the geographic information, the GPS, and a knowledge of the roll, pitch, and yaw of the aircraft, remember the aircraft knows that. It has to know that in order to operate. And so it can record that roll, pitch, and yaw, and then if it also records the camera angle in addition to that, it can georeference that video. It can find out where on the surface of the Earth that video was. There are various software packages for utilizing this type of video. One of them is built into ArcGIS. It's actually pretty good. We only have 50 licenses of this, so it's not like all the other software. We get thousands and thousands. But there's this full motion video package. Actually, I'll just go ahead and show a demo of that. Not a whole demo. This is actually a video, and I tried to put the videos in this presentation, but they were too big. But trust me, I could hit play on here, and this would actually be moving. Okay, this is the cesspool that's sort of my neighborhood, so it's like 1,000 feet beyond my house. So I flew out there. This is real video, and then this is ArcMap projecting, using the information, the roll, pitch, the yaw, the aircraft, the camera angle, and projecting this frame into its proper geographic space. And notice it wasn't pointed exactly straight down, so it had to stretch it down here. Okay? They did a pretty good job. It's not perfect. Georeference video rarely is, because there's imperfections. I'm sure someday they'll get it better, but it matches up pretty well. It'd be a pretty good thing to do for emergency response, but it might not be the best solution if you were trying to get precise measurements. Right? Video. So that's an example of collecting georeferenced video, and there are other tools for this besides ArcGIS full motion video out there. But it's a good one. All right, one of the big things that gets created are true color, near infrared, or really any other type of sensor data that's stitched together into an orthophoto mosaic. An orthophoto mosaic is taking a bunch of pictures and turning them into a single picture. Okay? We'll talk about that in a second. And then finally, 3D models. You can build a 3D model using photogrammetric principles we'll talk about this semester. We can take a bunch of pictures of this building that we're in and build a 3D model of it and use that for wherever we wanted to. If we wanted to create an archive before they demolish this building, right after we put the new desks in here, why would they demolish it? Hopefully not. But you can do that. Now there are other sensors that are on more expensive drones. I'd hoped to take a field trip up to Vicksburg. The U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has some $200,000 drones that they fly up there. Now they're a little bit bigger than my drones, but the thing that are really expensive on them are the sensors, the LiDAR sensors, or the hyperspectral sensors. We may still do that. It didn't sound like they would do that, but they're putting together a slideshow that hopefully I'll be able to show in this course. Talk about what they did. But one of the guys that runs that program up there is not really, kind of like the second in command. I don't know what the position's called, but he actually took GIS courses right here, but back in 2006. So we didn't teach him anything about drones, but that's his job now is doing drones for the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, collecting data. All right, so I already showed that show. So basically, just like any remote sensing technique, it's a way to get raster GIS data into our GIS database. And it complements existing techniques. So sometimes it's part of a mission that included, sometimes drones, we're not collecting the primary imagery from the drone. Even if we're doing a large-scale mapping effort, or a large mapping effort, over a large area that we need satellite data for, oftentimes drones are a very useful tool to collect the in situ, the field data. So it fits between satellite, manned aircraft, and smaller coverage, terrestrial approaches. It's sometimes not possible to visit everywhere, but it's easier to fly a drone over an area and see what's out there. So one of the big advantages are that UASs allow you to acquire data whenever you desire. Okay? Just plan, fly, download your images, process your data. You're not dependent on a lot of other factors other than the weather to collect your own data and get it done. All right. In terms of spatial resolution depends on your flying. What is spatial resolution, by the way? What am I talking about? It's kind of related to scale. I asked the scale question earlier. Okay. Spatial resolution is the size that a particular cell is in X and Y. Usually they're the same, but not always. So the spatial resolution that we get, in other words, the things that we'll be able to resolve on the ground, are related to how high you fly. So you can go, like if you fly even like 100 meters, cameras are good enough nowadays to get down to 100 meters would be, even at 100 feet, cameras are good now enough to get down well below an inch to see something that's smaller than an inch. So you could expect to see resolution to a few centimeters to a few inches or even below an inch to fly low enough. So that's significantly higher than current satellite technology. The highest resolution satellite now is still above 10 centimeters. Due to the altitudes at which drones fly, obviously cloud cover is rarely an issue. Sometimes it's an issue because you don't want to collect data that doesn't have shadows in it, or maybe you do want to not have shadows in it, so you're flying you're waiting for a time where there are clouds. In either case, there aren't as many weather delays, more usable imagery here. Okay, so here's an orthophoto mosaic where I've zoomed in. Beach section where they're planning to remove these rocks right here along the beach. Okay? So we can see we can use that to profile what these rocks look like. Okay, why can we profile them? Well, part of the stitching process creates a digital elevation model. This is a digital elevation model of this beach on Grand Cayman. And we can see the subtle changes in this area right here, near-shore area, where the rock is. Measure them, and then if maybe we're going to model how those changes would affect the wave energy, which I'm not an expert in that part, but or we could just archive it to see the difference after the rock was removed. We would have that data. Here's a hill shade of the same area. You see, these are actually vegetated areas. This is actually vegetation. So we can measure the crown here, or the size of the trees. There's lots of things that we could utilize that for. In this hillshade, one thing that I noticed right here is that the actual surf zone right here does create a little bit of a problem. So that's where the waves are actually crashing. But other than that, the digital elevation model is a helpful thing. So this is the workflow for an unmanned aerial system. Okay. So you have, the reason why I made this diagram is that all throughout this workflow you have software decisions related to the workflow that you're making. Okay. We've got mission planning. Mission planning involves using software to plan a path. And you also, even before you get there, you have to plan what sensor is appropriate. Do I need hyperspectral? Do I need multispectral? Do I just need a normal camera? How high a resolution camera do I need? Which drone am I going to be able to fly that camera on? And that sort of thing. Next, we've got the data acquisition part. So we acquire the data after we plan. So usually the data acquisition is just the execution of the plan itself. Then when we're processing our data, what software do we need if we want to create orthophotos? We want to create a point cloud. Point cloud, I took out in fact, I'm going to show one of these videos to show you what I mean here. That's on this guy. So this is that same area. I'll just actually go with that. This is that same area. This is actually not showing up. Hold on.